Welcome to Ninerology, Faithful in the Trenches. I'm your host, Alan Huerta, and we're here to talk about all things 49ers, specifically defense this episode. It is now Friday, February 23rd, and the 49ers still do not have a defensive coordinator after the firing of Steve Wilks. So the question is, Kyle Shanahan, what are we doing here? Who is your next defensive coordinator? We know we need one. Now, firing Steve Wilks was the right idea. Should have never been hired in the first place, and even after that, should have been let go after the bye week. We know it was more of a panic hire. Why? Because the 49ers had lost DeMeco Ryans to the Houston Texans late, and there weren't many prospects available. And Steve Wilks was a hot, sexy candidate after not getting the job in Carolina. And so Kyle Shanahan swooped right in without knowing that he runs a different scheme and it would not work out well. We saw that the stunts were no longer there with the defensive line. We saw it was just a completely different scheme. Steve Wilks was known for blitzing 43 to 48% of the time. That dropped to 19% because it was just a different philosophy on how the defense should be run between Kyle and Steve Wilks. So now this next hire cannot be done out of desperation. You need to take your time. It needs to be the right hire. And there's been a lot of rumors, whether it be Rex Ryan, whether it be Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, even Richard Sherman, or an internal hire. At the end of the day, my guess is it's going to be an internal hire. We haven't seen any hot, sexy names as far as going for an interview. So my guess is those interviews are happening in-house. If it were me, I would be guessing the job's going to come down to Chris Kasarik or Johnny Holland. My guess would be Johnny Holland. Why? Because as the linebackers coach, he has a great relationship with both the back end, the front end, and especially the heart of the defense, the linebackers. Even with Dre Greenlaw out for potentially the first half of the year, if not a little bit longer, that is the heartbeat of the 49ers defense. Even if you have Eric Armstead, even if you have Nick Bosa, even if Chase Young ends up coming back, the heart is that linebacking core. And so the question is he going to take the job? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But my assumption is we're going to hear something either later on today or over the weekend that Johnny Holland or Chris Kasarik are going to be the new defensive coordinator for the 49ers. So now the question is, how do we restock and retool that defense so that they can come back to the glory days? There are a lot of free agents. Just to name a few, let's go down the list. You have Chase Young, who is just a one-year rental. You have Javon Kinlaw, who did not get that fifth-year option, just coming off that 4-year, $15 million rookie year deal. You have Tashawn Gibson. You have Clelin Ferrell, who is great against the run and honestly a great edge setter, and I think he should come back. You have Randy Gregory. You have Sebastian Joseph Day. You have Oren Burks. You have Kevin Givens, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. You have Logan Ryan. So you have a lot of free agents. Now, granted, most of them I don't think should come back, but I want to highlight a few that I think should come back and maybe a surprise one or two that should be let go or traded. Chase Young, I do think should come back. Now, we know a lot of effort issues with Chase Young, specifically in the first two playoff games. We know that. That's been well documented. We don't need to hit that again. But there's one common thing with Chase Young, Logan Ryan, and Sebastian Joseph Day, and even Randy Gregory that we've seen. They did not go through an entire offseason with Chris Kasarik or that 49ers defense. Not an entire offseason with the vets. So my guess is the 49ers, all we hear is culture, culture, culture. There's a specific culture in the 49ers locker room and on the field. You hear that from free agents that come over. It is just different with how practices are run. And these pending free agents have not gone through that. Why? They were one-year rentals. They did not go through an entire offseason. So my assumption is if you give Chase Young an entire offseason with Chris Kasarik and those veterans, you are going to see a different Chase Young next year, especially if you give him a one-year prove-it deal where he's going to have the option to really break the bank the following year. That's what my guess is. They're going to do everything they can to try to bring back Chase Young. Now, we know that the salary cap is going to be somewhere in the $250 million range, which does give the 49ers an extra $7 to $8 million, which means they'll be about 7 to 8 under that cap, which is good for them. But we know that there's going to be a few restructures to allow them to make the moves that they need to, resign the people they need to. We know Talanoa Hufanga needs an extension. We know that Brandon Ayuk wants and needs to get relocked back up. And then there's other pending free agents that you need to fill. And so I think there's going to be some restructures, but I think Chase Young needs to come back. I think they need to figure out a way to get back Clelin Ferrell. I do think that we need to shore up that defensive line, but there's one key piece that I think they need to consider trading or straight up cutting with a post-June designation, and that is Javon Hargrave. Now, the reason they picked up Javon Hargrave was two reasons. One, you weaken your biggest competitor from last year, which was the Philadelphia Eagles. And then two, you make your defensive line stronger. The first part happened, and there go the balloons. The first part definitely happened because, what did we see? The Eagles got exposed. The 49ers put out that blueprint. And with that blueprint that was put out, the Eagles lost 5 of their next 6 games. But we did not see Javon Hargrave earn that contract. He has a 4-year, $84 million deal at $21 million a year, and he did not live up to that. Now, you could say it's because he was in a contract year. He had to deal with all of the negotiation stuff and all of that. Boo-hoo, you're making $21 million a year and you did not show up for it. So luckily, this deal was structured in a way where they could do a post-June 1st trade or cut him. And if they do that, they would save roughly $10 million against the cap. There would be about a $5.8 million cap hit. But you still end up saving more money in the long run, and then you can build on that later because you cannot be paying $21 million a year to a guy who is not going to be producing the way he should be producing. So that's going to be my assumption. I do think they're going to extend Talanoa Hufanga. There needs to be a pickup to replace Dre Greenlaw because we know he's going to probably be out for the first 8 weeks of the season. My guess is they try to bring back Azeez Al-Shire or even Kawan Alexander at those much discounted rates because they are getting a little bit older, but they know the culture, they know the defense, and they can step right in, and they know they're not going to be the starter once Dre Greenlaw comes back. So that's my assumption. I think that this week we're going to see the first step to those pieces falling in line with the defensive coordinator hire, probably somebody internal, and then I think the next thing is turning your attention to free agency, toward the combine, toward the draft, and figuring out how do you retool this 49ers defense so that way they can help carry the 49ers to the playoffs and to a Super Bowl, to that 6th Lombardi. And so that's all we have for today. Focusing on that 49ers defense, we're going to do a position-by-position breakdown in the coming weeks. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Ninerology Faithful.